This is Eric Krohn. He is the Director of Business Incubation Program at Binghamton University. Eric is a successful inventor and entrepreneur who leverages his experience in guiding and mentoring companies at the Koffman Southern Tier Incubator in downtown Binghamton and the Innovative Technologies Complex at BU's main campus in Vestal. As Director of Business Incubation, he facilitates programming to help startups grow and succeed, with an emphasis on high-tech, high-growth ventures. Eric's companies include Gyro Heat Technologies, Be Safe Products, and Cubed Naturals.
So good morning, everyone. I want to first start by thanking you for inviting me in to really talk about what's become one of my greatest passions, but really hopefully to help everyone understand what the Koffman Incubator really means to all of us in this community. There we go. So that's me. My name's Eric Krohn. I actually grew up on Murray Hill, right next to the university. Part of what I do is teach people how to use a business model canvas. I'm sure everyone has probably heard of something called a business plan. It's like this 80-page monstrosity. We don't really use those anymore. I think banks are the last group to still use business plans for the most part. But not that long ago, maybe 15 years, Alex Osterwalder created something we call the business model canvas. And that's actually, it's a one piece of paper with 9 segments, and that encompasses what your business plan is. And really, it is a kind of a standard in incubation, all the way up to even companies like GE are using it. But I'm lucky enough to have been able to speak nationally and internationally on its use. I did start our area's first CBD company. I've actually since exited all those companies. Surprisingly, started as a chef at the Culinary Institute of America. Afterwards, I later wanted to do more. So I got a degree in nutrition and worked clinically for, I think it was about 4 years in geriatrics. And then for 6 years, I ran health education programs across New York State for folks living with HIV and AIDS. And somehow that didn't take up enough of my time, so I decided to become an inventor. I have a couple patents pending out there. But I quickly learned that inventors die poor because all we do is spend our money inventing things, and quickly realized that what I needed to do was become an entrepreneur so that I could start capitalizing on some of these things. So what is an incubator? A lot of times we ask this question and people are thinking eggs and chickens. We don't have any eggs or chicken in the building, I promise you. Maybe in the lunch hall, but certainly no eggs going on here. But what I'd like to do is explain how we got here, and then I'll divulge a little bit more into what we do inside the building. But on the screen here is President Stanger. He came to us from, I believe it was Buffalo University. And when he got to Binghamton, this is a story right out of his mouth. His handlers were driving him around the city of Binghamton, kind of showing him all the different sites and things that the university has. And President Stanger turns to his handlers and says, "Hey, okay, well, I think it's time. Take me to the incubator now. I want to see that." And the handlers were like, "Oh, we don't have one of those in Binghamton." And Harvey said, "Well, we're going to change that. We're going to change that." It took 7 years to pull the whole thing together. Binghamton University Foundation, major contributor, Visions, SUNY Broom, all these people on the screen helped really make it happen. And it's a classic story of state funding where we had a lot of it and then we had none of it and then we had some of it. In the end of this arduous story of state funding to put the Koffman together, SUNY Broome won a grant that allowed us to build the 3rd floor onto the building. But we really needed the endowment that the Koffman family gave to the Koffman in order to ensure that we are always able to pay for staff to be mentors and really keep the building afloat. So the Koffman Incubator is technically not part of Binghamton University. It is a nonprofit called the Southern Tier High Technology Institute. No one would ever know that. But the point is, the building itself needs to pay for rent or rather taxes and energy and stuff like that by having rent come in through different companies. And then the staff are either employees of Binghamton University or Binghamton's Research Foundation. Personally, I am a university employee, but it's just a very interesting web of people that have really come together to ensure that the building can exist and work with startups. So I was saying before, just to change things up a little bit, I thought I'd ask the group a couple questions through our little talk. So my first question to the room is, how many startups are formed every day in the US? And I know you're on mute, so I can just burn through it, but I'll let you think about that for a second. 72 startups are being formed every day in the US. And if that wasn't hard enough, most of them are in a way trying to do this with no money. And that's really kind of where the beginnings of why we need incubators in communities stems from. This idea where people are taking a $5,000, which in a lot of cases might be a lot of their savings, and really trying to step out and start the next major great company. We call it bootstrapping, really, but a lot of great companies have in fact started through bootstrapping. One example is Airbnb. I'm sure people have heard of Airbnb. It's an app or website where you can rent rooms in people's houses. So how did they start? Well, right there. That's how they started. They actually advertised a spare room with an air mattress on it. And that's how Airbnb got started. So if you think about testing a business model with a bootstrap budget, it's absolutely possible, and you can still become a unicorn, as we call it, $1 billion company from doing that. But there's another reason why you definitely need incubation in towns, because of this question. What percentage of startups fail in the first 5 years because they don't have incubation? This is the scary one. 90%. 90% of people's hard work, dreams, and money fails because they didn't have the resources that most incubators out there are really built to offer people. So what's the flip of that coin? What percentage of startups fail that do participate in an incubator? 50%. 50%. Still not great, but actually a lot better than the alternative. We're very lucky at the Koffman. We're actually at 80% so far. We are a very young incubator. But luckily, the majority of the companies that do successfully exit end up staying in our communities, renting offices, and hiring people. Just to kind of give you an idea of what's inside the incubator, we are filled with different types of offices, just to, in a general sense, appeal to different types of companies. Co-working is basically allowing people to work throughout our building. There's desks and tables and things set up. Not that any of them you know are signed up to one individual person. We actually have very fast Wi-Fi at the incubator, so I'll tell you a quick story. We had one gentleman who worked in our co-working, and he wrote and published 7 books a year, just sitting at his desk. Over, you know, everywhere has windows in the building, so great views. But he was able to do all that work just in our co-working area. We have virtual membership, which has really become more prolific because of COVID, obviously. But we have people all over the world, which one of them a couple of them actually, I'll talk about later, that are actually paying $300 a month just to talk to myself or my peer, Michael, who works with clean energy companies. But as well as just kind of being involved with the Koffman Incubator as far as workshops, possibly using us as their address as they try to create an American entity. We also have smaller offices. We call those administrative offices. Dry labs, which is basically just a much longer shoebox of a room. Wet labs, which is basically your chemistry setup, if you will. All the students at the university love seeing our wet labs because they are so brand new and not broken. Not that I'm saying they are at the universities, but we are a very new building, some pretty fancy stuff. And then we have a high bay, which is like a giant cinder block garage that was a blank slate for any of our startups to grow into, that we're looking to get into more manufacturing or something like that. And in fact, one of the companies that I will highlight at the end has just moved in on Monday. So if you have seen any of our social media posts or anything out there on LinkedIn, we were highlighting Ashland moving into the high bay. But in total, we have 34 offices that we are able to rent. And again, that rent money goes directly to paying for the operations of the Koffman itself. And we have an unbelievable amount of programs. We're actually a pretty small department with incredibly brilliant people throughout it. And so we've been very lucky to keep being awarded grants or various funding to have different programs. So in its entirety, the Koffman can be broken up into 2 different categories. One is the Southern Tier Clean Energy Incubator, and the other is the Binghamton Incubator. So one is all about clean energy. And if you haven't heard, 2 years ago, our esteemed professor, Stan Whittingham, won the Nobel Prize for really being the father of lithium-ion batteries. And our clean energy program is, in fact, I believe, the 2nd largest in New York State. And then we jokingly have what we call the dirty energy program, which is everything that's not the clean energy program. And that's what I'm the director of. So I get to work with a huge variety of companies, 2 of which I'll highlight at the end, but it's a lot of fun. We also have a robust NSF I-Corps, National Science Foundation. This is a federally funded program teaching people all about customer discovery. Really, the intent was to bring researchers from the university into this idea of taking their technology and learning how to commercialize it. We have Exceed, which is a clean energy program, working with a lot of our students as interns, trying to bring, again, technologies out of the lab. Various accelerator programs, which is looking for companies that maybe have just an idea that's worth really developing into a company, or perhaps they have already started a very young startup but needs our attention to really help bring it into very much more growth than they have. Explore and Launch was I think we're actually getting rid of it, but we're just giving people 6 months trial to come into the incubator and see what we could do. but we've actually just have been so busy that we've kind of deleted that program. Startup New York, Hotspot New York, those are actually New York State programs offering tax benefits to people that are starting their businesses in designated locations, which we are one. Soft Landings program is actually one we just won the grant. Senator Schumer actually announced it before we even knew. But this program involves us and international companies. I believe we're starting in Bulgaria and Serbia, and we will start educating them, the same sort of mentorship we do here. And then the goal is, of course, to clear the path for their company to relocate or expand into New York State. I'm actually the master mentor on that program. I did not make up that name, but happy to take it. And then Empower ST is a program where we are looking for the nation's top talent in energy storage. And this program, I think it pays like $100,000 to the person, and they would get to work in Stan Whittingham's lab and continue to develop energy storage technologies. So you can see we've all are constantly busy. But what do we really do inside that building besides run all these crazy programs? Well, we invite a lot of speakers in. I believe that's the mayor right there, or the last mayor, Rich David. We hold a lot of programs with companies. I believe this is, that's the accelerator program right there. Networking events for startups and companies that support startups. And then we've also brought in workshops for the community. I believe this one was teaching people how to use LinkedIn better. So a lot of fun. And this is our I-Core, but all of our programs for the most part are open to anyone. We only have about 20% of our members are from the university. Everyone else is actually all around the world. And we have 3 mentors in order to get all this work done. Myself, Tony Frontera. Tony was the head of marketing for Macintosh amplifiers, so cool. And years ago was my teacher at SUNY Broome, and is now a lecturer at Binghamton University. And then my counterpart, Mike Jagowski, is our director of the Clean Energy Program. Some fun facts about the Koffman. This is our little bragging slide, I guess. We opened in April of 2017, so we are a startup by all means. 35,000 square feet. It seems smaller when you're in there. Very, very cozy. Every office has a window, kind of a cool fact. 10 programs. I don't really know what they mean by 2 locations. 10 international companies. It's amazing how people all around the world have learned who we are and reach out to work with us. We've created 381 jobs. And what I mean by that is, no, not in my department. We're actually, I think, only at 15 still. But since working with us, our member companies have created that many jobs, most of them local. And there you go, 85% of the companies are non-university related. So we really are, I guess you could say, agnostic to whom we work with. So I wanted to point out a few of the companies that we have. I'll try to express the idea that for a lot of our startups, they are pretty closed about showing their actual technologies. So I'm just going to use their logos and then explain what they do. And then I'll open things up for questions about anything, as long as I don't have to break my NDA with the companies. So the first one I want to point out is Ashland. Norma Byron is the CEO of Ashland. Norma, I promise you, I'm not even kidding. Norma and one of her colleagues in this company drive to the Koffman Incubator from Virginia once a week just to work out of the Koffman Incubator. It's amazing. Norma just moved into our high bay, and she makes something called a vanadium flow battery. This is some crazy stuff. Picture this square cubic monstrosity with big fluid tubes going in and out of it. And, you know, I think it has like 5 or 10 gallons of sulfuric acid running through it. It looks like something out of a crazy science lab. So the question should be, well, why the heck would someone want something like that, right? Well, it turns out vanadium flow batteries allow for more cycles, more charging and discharging of energy than lithium ion batteries. So Norma is in process of putting one of these on top of a large apartment building in Manhattan, which is not an easy task. And they go very well with solar power and buildings. So these vanadium flow batteries constantly have this electrolyte sulfuric acid solution running through them. And it's actually able to hold a massive amount of energy, but be able to use it and reuse it. So these batteries, I think it's right now, it looks like they last about 20 years. And a lithium ion battery, we really don't think would do that when you consider the draw that an entire building would have. So very neat technology. In fact, she's going to be putting these on buildings for free, zero cost, and she will actually make her money on the amount of energy saved. So very, very cool business. BuyOnSite came to us from South Korea. Don't ask me to go over the science of this company because these guys are so smart. I am not even close to smart enough to really understand it. But this is an artificial intelligence company, and they are using artificial intelligence to test protein sites on viruses, bacteria, things like that. So as an example, we could use BuyOnSite's AI to work on a cure for Lyme's disease. And traditionally, when you do this type of testing, it takes about 15 minutes for a human to kind of drop the sample into the different Petri dishes, and it takes a while, 1 for every 15 minutes. That is the standard. At this point, BuyOnSite is able to do 10,000 tests in a half hour. So this is really the power of what AI can do in the medical field by taking the human out of something and running just so many tests that it helps us really help identify protein sites, but really a way to combat all sorts of viruses and things that we haven't been able to do before. These guys are, I believe they're still in Korea. They keep going back for business. One of their main funders is the government itself down there. But due to COVID, it's very hard to get back to America. So they went back about a month ago and should be back soon, but very interesting company. And lastly, this is a company that I work with a lot and also part of the soft landings program. This is too immersive for you. They are out of Serbia. They do not have an office yet in the US, but we are working on setting one up at the Koffman, at least a virtual office. Too Immersive is a video production company that was nominated for an Emmy last year. Very cool stuff. They work in the anime or animated video productions, and they have a patent pending process where at any point you could actually look at this on YouTube. They have a video, you know, just like watching a movie, but you are able to change the view 180 degrees at any point. So essentially, you're able to look around like the character in the movie that you're watching. And so they made a video for a music group actually using this technology, and that's what got them the nomination for an Emmy. But we've work, every Friday, 9 a.m. It's 3 o'clock over there. But very neat stuff. We're actually pursuing investments in New York State, as well as going for another round of an Emmy nomination. So my point in picking these three companies is to really kind of show the variety of folks that we work with at the Koffman. A lot of it is grant funded or funded through pitches and investments. We deal with a lot of companies that are pre-revenue. So that's why sometimes they're very skeptical about showing pictures of their technology or things like that. But again, I am certainly happy to answer any questions that I can about other companies or incubation in general. But thank you again for inviting me to introduce you to the Koffman. And with that, I'd love to open the floor for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much for a fascinating talk. I have a question about the companies or the hopeful companies that you accept in. Do you have guidelines for certain ones, that kinds of things that you will not accept, and others in terms of that would have priority for accepting? I mean, my guess is the clean energy, for example, would be an example of the latter. But are there certain things that you just won't touch?
That's a great question. I will try to answer it from Mike's side, the clean energy. We are always looking for companies that are investable. So let's start there. That's just kind of the environment we're in. If the company is not investable, there's just not a lot of quick growth that we can add. We certainly specialize in energy storage. So the clean energy program is always going to be somewhat partial, I think, to that, because we have just so much to give. But with that said, we really have seen a large variety of clean energy companies. I think the most pertinent filter for it is what is the carbon, how much carbon are you going to be removing from the environment if your company is successful? And we use that as a gauge because that's what New York State uses as a gauge. That's what NYSERDA, it's really the only way to even get into NYSERDA as a company, the New York State Energy Research Development Agency. But that's who funds. If you look at your energy bill, you are paying NYSERDA every time you pay your energy bill. But that money is going into things like this clean energy program. And so because of that, they have their interest. And so it's removing carbon and it's electricity. So we do have two companies involved in gas combustion, but the state is not too keen on gas at all. In fact, I believe we are not allowing any new pipes to be put into New York State to bring gas to houses. They just don't want it anymore. They prefer electricity. For non-clean energy companies, somewhat the same. Looking for companies that are investable. Our department has invested. In fact, I just pitched one of my graduates last week, and we invested $50,000 into his startup. I have metrics, and I have a state and board of directors that look at the companies that I bring in. So I'm always looking for companies that, sure, high growth technology, that's kind of easy to say, but I want companies that are going to make the Koffman Incubator, Binghamton University, and Binghamton in general look good. I want companies that we can do our best to grow and help them succeed. And in the end, they remember us, or there's some kind of press saying, hey, look, this wonderful company came out of Binghamton and all the efforts of all these people down there. So that's really what I look for in my company is to really make dreams happen. And you know, I'm not here to take a Jello company from, you know, 10 customers to 20. We really want to have a larger impact. But great question. I love that one.
Do you have any companies that you work with that are interested in developing hemp products, paper, materials? You know?
Yeah, great question. I'm the guy that gets that question all the time and haven't figured out why. So I've owned 3 hemp companies. I've exited all of them, which is why we actually have a large contingent of cannabis companies now at the incubator, and I work very closely with the largest lobbying group in New York State for it, blah, blah, blah. The closest thing, so I've talked with professors and such about decorticization. I can barely say that word, but basically taking your hemp fibers and turning it into a fabric. There's only 2 machines, I think, in all the US that can do it. It's a very arduous task. It involves certain chemicals to loosen the fibers. So I haven't actually heard if that woman was having success yet, but the closest I have to someone making construction materials, clothing, paper, anything like that, we have a company called Hemp House at the Koffman right now, and it really great story. Also very confusing. They're kind of out of England, but the owner has been living in the Hudson Valley for many years, so he drives up from the Hudson Valley to the Koffman weekly. And they also own 1,000 hectare in Zambia. It's a crazy story. And so essentially these folks have a big trailer filled with different technologies where, you know, you put your hemp flowers in one end, and out the other end you get a edible protein, you get oil that has a CBD content, and you also get what was the other one? I think just like a wood pulp. So in Zambia, at their 1,000 hectare, they have set up all these farms, and they're working with the government there to teach people how to farm and create a sustainable living. This box actually runs on solar power, as well as burning the oil that comes out of the hemp plant. But to pull that off, it's a lot of money. So I've had to take this company that's here at the Koffman and figure out a way to bring revenues in as we work down that path to creating this, you know, crazy machine that we're going to have to ship to England and Zambia. And so the solution was recycling. So huge problem for every hemp farmer in New York. They have an unbelievable amount of branches and stems from the plant, and it just sits on their property. They have nothing, you know, they end up having to pay truckers to take it somewhere. And at the same time, we also have the people that are producing CBD. You know, they take all this flower, and when it's done, it's a waste product. It smells terrible too. And they have just literal tons, like I think 30,000 pounds of this just at one place in Portland. So we started saying, look, we have this waste product that people will almost pay you to take. Why don't we make fire logs with it? And so that's what Hemp House is doing right now in the Kmart Plaza in Binghamton. They have, what was it, 2,400 ton of branches, and I believe they got the 30,000 pounds of the wasted hemp flour, and they are grinding it and using machines to compress it into burning blocks. They're having them tested at Intertech, and they're actually for sale today in the Hudson Valley. I think it's called Canna Brick, Canna Heat, something like that. He keeps changing the name, but so that's the closest we've come. But it's a really neat project because here we're taking a waste product or something that really is stressing farmers out, having all this junk, and he's bringing it in and finding a whole new economy for it. So I think that's a fun one. I wish we had the construction blocks, but maybe Andy will get there someday. But thank you for that question. That was a good one.
Yeah, I have a question. About 3 years ago, I had a computer engineering student that was working at the incubator, the Koffman, and working with I believe it was a friend of his that was doing a startup in virtual reality and using technology that would be able to follow your finger or hand movements. And he was doing this as his master's project. But my question is, when students like these students begin a startup at the incubator, when they graduate, do they continue with that, or do they move out, or what?
So I'm guessing that the company was Enhanced VR. He's actually the company that I just got our department to invest in. So he was a student at the university, got his master's. I met him years ago. That company started as a bunch of PVC pipes that resemble a car, and he was able to translate the motion of a video game into the motion of this PVC pipe race car thing. And from there, he evolved the company into an education module for young students, where we were able to watch hands and actually could have two people at the same time, which was pretty advanced. But where he's actually landed now is creating virtual reality training modules for the manufacturing process, where people that work manufacturing lines can get trained and tested in the virtual reality about different safety procedures or whatever it is. So he successfully raised some money. He has a pipeline of customers, and essentially he reached what we like to call operational sustainability. And he also was a big proponent of believing he was at the same place also. So he just said, look, I want to do this, and moved to an office just right down the street, really, from the incubator, and is doing great. We got a call, I think it was the day before I pitched for his investment. He got a call from a let's just say very large corporation. They wanted a $30,000 job done in the next month, a $50,000 job by the end of the year, and hopefully in a couple of years it'll transition to $100,000 a month. So very exciting. Do they all have that sort of trajectory? No. Nope. It takes a special person like Matt Gill in this scenario. Very driven, hardworking, works with other people, and is just a wonderful person. Not that other folks aren't wonderful people, but it's very hard to find people that are willing to sacrifice your life to doing this, you know. So it really is a special when students continue their companies and stick with programming, because it's just very proud, and that's one of the main reasons why we invested in him. So I'm sorry, Carl, did I hopefully I answered your question?
Yes, you did.
Is there any kind of a time limit? I mean,
Where's your ball?
10 years that you either make it or break it, or do you just sort of look at each individual case?
I think you're asking, is there a time limit for people at the incubator?
Yeah.
Great question. It's actually one that we struggle with a little bit, just as we learn what the true needs of startups are that we work with. In the clean energy program, that time length, we are still working on figuring it out. It's known to, 5 to 10 years. There's so much money involved in the clean energy companies, so much investment needed to even get close to commercializing their technologies that we can't kick them out. They need to stay with us for a very long time, and they really need that team to help them get to that point. Our other companies, or the ones I work with, we used to think 2 years, and that's pretty close. But I have no problem keeping someone 3 or 4 years if they are working on achieving the milestones that we set up and are working on. As long as we see growth, then we're happy for the most part. But our goal is, of course, to graduate people into the community, and hopefully they'll be successful without us at that point. It's like kicking your kid out of the basement. Like, all right, you've done your schooling, go get a job in an apartment, kind of thing. And it's a proud moment, but sad, of course, when we lose them.
I am not a scientist in any form or shape, but I heard about an incubator that was starting on Main Street in Owego years ago. Yes, a biology person. You know how they made out, and are they still functioning, or what? And are they part of this Koffman group now?
So I'm not too sure about Owego. My guess, because I had a meeting last year with some of the people in government there, a company, I guess, had moved some people out of state, and they had a large science lab that they wanted to open up for startups to use, like a bio incubator, if you will. I have not heard if they filled the space. I know in that scenario, they won a small grant to help with the government of Owego to renovate the place. But I am not actually sure if they were able to carry through. We have in Syracuse, we have something called the CNY Bio Incubator. Very fancy, brand new, big building. It's an incubator for medical devices. Very hard to find companies to go in there. Tough business. It really is a tough business. It seems to be that there's so much money in energy. It's like they're giving away grants. They're not actually giving away grants, but it seems like it. But for a lot of the other stuff, it's really slow moving. But my hope is with the university's School of Pharmacy, as well as some other opportunities opening up, that we'll see more science-based incubation going on.
Obviously, model of Airbnb or something where they would become billionaires, is an attractive one, but are probably pretty far-fetched. To what extent does the alternative of making enough of a splash to get the attention of the industry and then getting bought up by a big company and making a bundle of money that way, is that something that people talk about as something that they would like to do?
So the idea of exiting, that's a fun question. Thank you. Companies that take investment should, and almost all, talk about exit. Companies that do not take investments, the founders tend to not think about exit plans or being bought, and usually they don't design their company from the start to even be able to be sold. But when it comes to all the other companies, it is an absolute must. It is something that we demand that they tell us in investment pitches, one-pagers introducing the company. We want to know that you have a plan. I don't care how great anyone's invention is or how much money they're making, you always need investment. You always need more money to grow, scale, or improve. Lots of ways of doing it. People, banks are the cheapest money. VC firms, most expensive money. I keep trying to tell these startups, it's not all about VC firm investment. It's the most expensive money there is. There's other ways to get money, but it's all about growing. And once an investor is involved with something, then you have to grow. That's why we grow. Even we do something called safe agreements. It's just a very kind way of investing in a company. It's really better for the person receiving the money than us, but we're not in it to make money. Still looking for growth. It's all about growth. And so an exit plan, it's not a stopping of a company. It means, that you're about to really grow. So our clean energy companies, it's all about really getting up to a Series A. So that's nowadays, I think that's around $3 to $10 million investment. Pre-seed investment is, 50 to 100,000. Seed investment should be close to $500,000. And so once we get past that kind of $10 million investment, that's when we're really looking to sell the company to someone bigger. Not that that even means that you would stop doing what you do, but yeah, exit plan is essential. It really is essential. Also nice to put some money in your pocket. Any other questions? I think we have time for one more.
What do the founders tend to do once they exit?
That's a fun question. Usually just two things, one of two things. They either disappear and vacation the rest of their life. Like my friend, my colleague, Mike, he made a lot of money very early on his first company and then bought a sailboat and sailed around the world. And then he turned into the second category. You just start another company. And that's what Mike did. He sailed around the world. He crashed a sailboat into a beach, said, I guess I'll just start another company. And that's what he did. But that's what we do. I think at the point where you've learned enough that you can start a company and exit it, have someone pay you to leave. It's not even, it's like telling a painter, what are you going to do after you're done painting that painting? Probably going to paint another one, because even if you don't need the money, you just can't help but doing it. I've started 12 companies. I've exited all but one. Just can't help doing it. It's just, it's not that the process becomes easy in a way because you know what to look for, what to do, and it just becomes fun. And so what do you do when you exit? Either hide or jump right back into it. But most people hide, then jump back into it, then hide, then jump back into it. But you just can't stop. It's just part of our creative process. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
That's fascinating to hear what's going on in that building. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Thank you.
All right, we'll end the meeting here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.